Well, hello, everybody. I'm your host, Ed Parcaut of Helping the Brave, and let's bring in our guest today, Jeff Kildow. Did I get that correct, Jeff?
Yes, you did.
All right. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right. All right. So we're going to go back. What service and when?
United
I'm
States
sorry,
Air
what
Force.
service and why? Not when. I don't care. Why?
Okay. The Air Force. I joined on the 19th of January, 1962, and was discharged on the 18th of January, 1966. And the why was because I'm the eldest of 7 siblings, and my dad was a carpet layer, so there was no money for me to go to college. But he told me about the GI Bill. And so, in essence, I exchanged 4 years in the Air Force for 4 years in college.
Gotcha. And then, so why'd you pick the Air Force?
Right. Because my scores were so good.
I mean, they picked you.
Yes, sir. I knew you would understand.
My dad was in the Air Force. My uncle was in the Air Force, they both worked. My dad worked on airplanes, which was a good fit for being in the Air Force. But also, you got to remember, so you were in 62. I think he was more like 65 or 6. The Air Force, came out of the Army back in the late 50s. So it only been
40s, 1947.
1947, right? Sorry. So really, that's only 20 some years old. That's really not an old service if you look at now with Navy just turned 250, same with the Marine Corps. And I think same with the Army. That's a young service. Yes. And they needed people. And I didn't realize how many people were in the Air Force. And I think a lot of it had to do during Vietnam because they needed people also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So you joined the Air Force, did it for 4 years. What did you do in the Air Force?
I was a missile maintenance technician on a missile you probably never heard of, the North American GAM-77 Hound Dog.
Never heard of it, but that didn't mean anything. I was on a missile guy.
Okay, well.
I was in the Navy. I'm a corpsman, so we don't really focus on that type of stuff.
Okay, well, that works. It came out in 1960, and I think the last one was retired in about 74. You might think of it as a early cruise missile, but unlike some of the early missiles, the unmanned missiles like Matador and Beaumark, which just were unmanned bomber, they would take off from where they were going and go to the place and bomb. The Hound Dog had a special feature that sounds ridiculous today, but it was a big deal back then. They called it Hound Dog because it could do a dog leg. Instead of going directly from where the bomber launched it to the target, it could do a feint to draw off Soviet aircraft or anti-aircraft missiles, and then it would turn and supersonically go to the target and take it out with a nuke.
Gotcha. Yeah, totally different than today's weapons, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
yeah.
And then it was
like a wooden toy against like.
Yeah, and yet it was amazingly accurate. It hung from a B-52, one under each wing. It was big, 43 feet long, supersonic.
Wow. How much did it weigh?
Let me look at my notes here. I think I
just know how many people had to move.
13,800 pounds.
Wow, you didn't want to drop that on your foot.
Oh no, that thing was very, very difficult to handle.
Yeah, I mean that tells you how big the planes had to be to carry those things.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, if you look at a B-52 today, under the wings between the inboard engines and the fuselage, you can still see the attach points where the Hound Dog went. They use that now for bombs.
Wow.
That's what they did in Vietnam, too.
Wow. So you were in 4 years, were part of all that. And then you got out. You went to college because that's what you said you did, GI Bill. What did you do after that? Or I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut off your service. Did you want to talk about anything else?
Oh, that pretty much gives you an idea. If you have any questions, I'm willing to answer. But
no, I just didn't. I mean, because you did a lot of the aircraft stuff and you did the missile. I mean, you were in 4 years during the war, right? 62 to, it was Vietnam, right?
Yeah, I wasn't going very strong yet.
Right. It
Now,
just,
I was part of a contingency group that was sent to Guam in '65, which was kind of interesting. You've heard of the Arclight bombing series?
mm-hmm.
Well, this was well earlier than that. It was sort of a practice. And so we had 2 full additional wings of B-52s descend on the guys at Anderson Air Force Base. And it was pretty wild because they had no room for us. But it worked out well, and everybody got their practice in, and we were well set up when the Arclight was authorized.
Well, I mean, because the Vietnam, they did a lot with helicopters during that war, correct?
Yes.
I mean, not to say that the Air Force didn't do their other job, but there was a lot of helos that were used.
Oh, yeah.
War. Yeah. And
helicopters really came into their own as a military tool in Vietnam. Yes.
Yeah, because I've interviewed a bunch of pilots from there, and they were talking about how dangerous it was to be a pilot with the helos. Yeah, there's no protection at all. You're so close to the ground and everything else you're doing.
Well, they're so vulnerable too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it must have been a huge change from during the 60s all the way through to even the 70s with the changes. And I know you weren't part of the whole time, but just the bomb, different technology. And then even, today, how it's totally different with so much electronics and everything else in them. It's a totally different world.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I was in aerospace for 34 years. So I have my finger on that kind of technology all during those years you're talking about.
So you went to school, and then I assume you got on. So where did you get hired on after high school? After college?
I was hired right out of school by what was then Martin Marietta, later became Lockheed Martin.
Okay, all right. And then you worked there for what was your specialty there?
I was a systems engineer.
Okay.
Early on in my career, my very first assignments, I was part of the ground control team for the Skylab mission, the world's first orbiting laboratory.
Right. The first thing I thought it was ground control. It's Major Tom. Sorry.
I never thought of it. That's good.
As you said it, I was like that song started going on in my head.
Yeah, sure. Now it's in my head.
That's what happens with music and everything else in our lives.
That's for sure.
All right. So you did that. I mean, because before the show, I researched you a little bit because you do WWII fiction series. Is that correct?
That's one of them. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, all right. So you do your 30 years at Lockheed Martin. It's Lockheed Martin.
Yes.
And you retire from that. Because here's what I'm trying to get at. So Vietnam happened a long time, and please just don't take this wrong, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So did World War II.
Yep.
I'm more close to the Gulf War. And we had, so many people died for certain things. And if you go back to people lost in the wars, I'm going to get to my point here in a second when it comes to me. But and people are writing books, but I mean, Vietnam happened because my dad was in Vietnam. He died of hairy cell leukemia when I was 12 from Agent Orange. And that was when they said that it wasn't that, right? It didn't do anything. And there's so many people that were in the Army who got that sprayed on them in field saying, look, it's perfect. And then, 30 years later, they die. But to go back and start, how do you get into writing books about this time and all this? How did you get into that after your whole job? Because the only book I've written is about my industry, the mortgage industry.
Well, my dad served in World War II. He was in the Army Air Corps.
Okay.
In a theater most people never heard of, 11th Air Force in Alaska. His unit was C-47s. They called themselves the Eager Beavers, the 54th Troop Carrier Squadron. And all my uncles and everybody that I knew growing up that was, of the right age had been part of the war. And I just became fascinated with it and still am.
Well, I mean, you had to be a really tough guy to survive back then. I mean, the airplanes didn't have really insulation. They, if you're watching this stuff, I mean, it's a brutal what they were put through. I'm not saying that our guys going in the sand having any better, but it's a totally different way.
Totally different world. Yeah.
Yeah. And and people don't understand what we go through as people in the military and what we do. And I'm just glad people bring up that information and write stories about it so people can understand it, because of us, we're able to have the freedoms that we have. I'm not
absolutely correct
box about it, but I'm just saying that's so for me to for people. I'm not a writer. And I'm not even a reader. I'm a watcher. I prefer to watch the stuff versus read it. It's just, if I start reading a book, I fall asleep. That's how I am. But a lot of people enjoy. My wife will go through multiple books in a few days period, and I'm like, I just can't do that. I can listen to them, but so any of your books on Audible yet?
Not yet. No, that is in the future, I hope. Yeah.
I know I jumped ahead, but do you want to get into your book since I'm already
Sure. Oh yeah, you bet.
So how did you get into writing? Did you write manuals for the military or manuals for Lockheed Martin to start, or how did you get into it?
Well, actually, it started before that. I was playing around with it when I was in junior high, just, seeing if I could write a powerful paragraph, and little short stories. Fortunately, none of them were ever published.
Fortunately or unfortunately?
Yeah. You full of teenage angst, you know that.
Right.
Actually, once I was working for Lockheed Martin, I did write a number of manuals for the Skylab mission, which was a pretty interesting thing there. Because that was a NASA mission, it was a little different approach than the manuals you might see in the Army or the Air Force, for maintaining things. They were a whole different approach, whole different worldview. But once I got into it, I wrote a lot of stuff. And as I moved up in the ranks with Lockheed Martin, that always comes with more and more things to write. So I was doing daily reports and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of came natural to me.
And that's when you actually had to know how to write things.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I had a reputation late in my career. I insisted that the young guys that work for me would send me all their documentation before it was sent to management. And I would send it back with red lines, and they did not like that. But because people, I'm a redneck. I come from, that's just my background. I'm in California, but I was in Turlock, which I tell people after my dad died, we went dirt road poor, and that was just not my thing. But some people are good at writing, some people are good at talking, some people, and usually they're not the same person. That's often true. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And for people, and that's why. For people who have ghostwriters, people think ghostwriters write your whole thing. And it's like, no, it's not. They take your words and then put them into the right way and in your voice. And then that's still your stuff. You just verbalize it instead of typing with your fingers.
Right.
But I remember growing up as a kid when I was growing, we, typewriters, that's what we used. There was, and you use when the whiteout came, that was amazing. And then today you could just talk to something and it writes for you. It's
right.
Or
it's astonishing.
Or you can cheat and have ChatGPT write it all for you. One of those.
Ooh, that is cheating.
But it's the world is changing again, and I'm just glad certain people are writing certain things and keeping the history alive. So, is there any books that I would have heard of that you've written so far?
Well, I'd like to think you'd heard of them, but
no, because I know I've interviewed a bunch of writers, all from military, and they, one group, these two guys, they write, thrillers and, that side of it. And they write for, Tom Clancy now, how
oh yeah,
changed, and so, and they have a series coming out, and that's how they're making their money now. And then potentially they have, a Netflix thing coming out and a bunch of other stuff coming out. And that's the ultimate where you get to where you have those things, but not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants to get that. So from what I'm hearing is you want to write from what you've written because of your family and what they were involved in and people you've known, you write those stories to keep that alive. Is that one of them?
Yes, that's part of it. Yes. I do write thrillers, although to be exact, I write alternative history. Is that a term you're familiar with?
No, that just means it could have happened that didn't happen.
Yes, the what if.
Yeah.
The difference is if you think of a traditional military fiction, it'll choose somebody, say Admiral Nimitz, and you want to explore something about how he made his decisions. So you create a fictitious character that's on the ship with him, who can observe and make comments and ask questions and all this kind of stuff. But the history, the flow of what happens doesn't change. But with alternative history, at least the way I write it, there's several different styles. There's a point called the deflection point, where history ends and my imagination takes over. If I do my job right, you can't tell. In the book that's coming out shortly called Nazi Menace, I did a bunch of research. I did years of research on this book. I found a German Luftwaffe general in the 1930s who was the only German proponent of big long-range bombers. He was killed in 1936 in a stupid accident. He took off in an airplane by himself without removing the control locks and crashed. Well, in my story, he doesn't die. And so with your military experience, you know that every idea has to have a sponsor or will die. And that was essentially what happened with long-range bombers in Germany. Nobody was a sponsor. But in my story, this guy survives, so he's able to sponsor that concept. And what we end up with is German airplanes flying across the Atlantic and bombing New York City. And believe it or not, it's actually technically feasible using the technology of the times. It's tricky, but it can be done. And so that was what I did. And that means that this particular World War II story, most of it is set in the United States, which is very unusual for World War II stories. And I had a terrible time with the research because there just isn't a lot written out there. So there's things in there, little aside things that people in that era had to deal with. Like, for example, my hero buys a car, and the first thing he has to do is remove the gas rationing sticker on it, because the car was previously owned by a doctor, and they could get gas anytime because they would go to the people. But even though he was military, my hero, he wasn't allowed to have that kind of a sticker, so he had to go get a normal one.
Go
ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's kind of like the stuff during the 70s where people had to, your license plate by odd or even go get gas.
Yeah.
Which most people have no idea, and inflation, where they talk about how we have to explain what inflation is to people, because you can't just say the words. You have to explain what communism is and socialism, and you can't just say the word, because unless you're 50 or older, you're not going to understand it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes.
And that's why when we were, I'm not going to get political, but in the elections that happened, everybody's like, oh, we're going to have this red wave. I'm like, there's no way. There's not enough pain yet. There's no pain. You need to have a few more years of pain, because they don't understand what inflation is. They won't understand it until it gets so bad that it really affects them. And we did. And that's why things change. And that's why every so often, if someone needs to write about this stuff, every so often we need these things to happen so people remember how bad it is, just like what's happening in New York. We need on. We need to show how bad it is so people understand. The people who come here from other countries, immigrants who could try to get away from it and understand it, go, you guys are idiots. What are you doing? Well, these are young people, have never seen it, never heard of it.
Exactly.
And our colleges and high school and all that education doesn't explain any of this kind of stuff. That history is so important, because what's that thing? If you don't know it, you'll And that's the problem with not reading, not understanding, only going off of, and that's the thing. People's like, well, AI is going to take over. AI can't take over because it won't make anything. It only goes off of what we've made. So in a couple of years from now, it's going to stall and then be stuck because there's nothing but new that it can take over. It has the whole history of the world right now to use. But after that, it's going to be gone. It's not going to create anything. We have to create it for it to understand it.
Exactly right. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. The problem, just to reiterate what you said, in New York, the reason that guy got elected is that it sounds so good.
Yes, of course.
Socialism always does, and everything works fine until they run out of other people's money.
Yeah. What was her name? Who said that?
Uh, I'm not sure who said that, but I love the quote.
What, Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah, okay. I was thinking it might have been Maggie. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so true. And that's why, if you understand how bad things are, go to Europe. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
because they've been around a lot longer than the United States. They've been through it. And I try to explain to people. So in London, UK, whatever you want, their left is so far left. Our left looks right.
Yeah, I agree.
And people don't understand, and they don't understand that. And I interviewed a person before you, and he's going to go for politics. He's a vet, and he said, I couldn't do it recently because I had to change my political thing. I go, what did you change to? I go, he goes, Democrat. I go, why did you do that? And he goes, because their party, their ideas look more closer to me. I go, you mean of the 1960s?
Yeah. Yeah. I refer to them as unrepentant hippies.
I said, the problem these days is the party left every Democrat to serve. And
exactly
I go,
right.
I try to explain, I go, 98% of us are all in the middle. I interview so many people on my radio show, everything. We're pretty much all in the middle. We all get along, vets with us. I don't care what color you are. We don't care what color you are. We'll still say the same jokes against you. You say against me. We don't care. That's just how that works.
Yep.
But I said, the problem is you have that 1% on each side. They're so loud. We think they're the most going on. And he was talking about how he doesn't watch any news in the United States because it's skewed. I go, I get that. They don't just give you the stuff they want, but I go, it's not any. And he was telling me he gets it from other places. I go, well, it can't be the UK. It can't be from.
It can't be BBC. Please tell me it's not that.
But it's like, okay. And I don't care where I want all parties gone. That's never going to happen. And I want term limits because it would make the lobbyists go away.
I'm a strong favor of that. Yes.
And he's against it. I'm like, yeah, of course, because you want to get in and have a $75,000 negative, and then all of a sudden we're 20 million in 4 years. And then I go, if you have term limits, no lobbyist going to get involved. You're not going to be able to do the stuff you do now. I want term limits so that you go to do the way it was done in the 40s, the 20s, 30s, 40s. You would go to Congress, do your 8 years and come home, and then make your community better. That's what
citizen legislators.
Yeah.
That whole concept has been lost.
Yes, totally. It's all about making money, and that's all everybody cares about. And
money and power.
Yeah. And everybody's like, well, we got an authoritative person. I'm like, I don't care who's in power as long as they're cutting things and making it, they were like, well, they're cutting for vets. I go, well, it gets to a point where you can only do so much. You have to cut across the board. Because if you didn't cut across the board, then they can say you're cutting for everybody else and you're not doing anything over here. Anyway, I'm sorry. I got off my own tangent. Sorry about that.
No, that's right. Rice bowls exist forever.
Well, I mean, but you're right. It's like, but that's why we need stories to bring, especially about communism and socialism and all those things and why those things didn't work and why Nazis didn't work and what really is a Nazi, to explain to people what that stuff really is. And we need that stuff out there for people to read it.
That's right.
So thanks for writing those books.
To give you a little twist on my book, most books that involve Hitler do one of two things. Either they kill him off or he wins. Well, I find both of those ideas trite. So I split the middle. I'm not going to give you the exact plot, but what happens is that Hitler is permanently incapacitated, but he's not dead. And think about it, that was...
You stole that from the Dave movie, right?
Good. In a personality cult like Nazism was,
right,
and as powerful as Hitler was, everybody was afraid to make a decision in case he woke up and didn't like it. So basically, you have this whole leading party in Germany paralyzed because nobody can make a decision. Made it a lot of fun to write.
Sounds that. So your books, is this correct? America Under Attack. Is that you?
That a quick review of that. That was the original title years ago when I self-published, which was a huge mistake. It's been
self-published or the title?
No, well, both actually, because people think it's about 9/11.
Oh, gotcha. Even though it's history of World War II on it?
Yeah. So the new title is A Nazi Menace. And that way it fits in with the other two books. The second book is Red Menace. that takes place against the background of the Korean War. The Korean War is secondary; it's in the background, but it's there. And then the third one is Fourth Reich Menace, and that takes place during the 1956 Suez Canal crisis. Put that in quotes because it was really a war, but with the same characters. It's a series.
Gotcha. Well, it can only be a war as if Congress approved it, right?
Yeah, right. Tell that to the warriors.
But I'm just saying that's what they're like. You can't do this. No, it's a military action or whatever. It's not a war.
Yeah.
That's how they get around all that. I don't care what
Police action, like they called Korea.
Yeah, that was one of the things, or Vietnam, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many, and people saying all this stuff that they say, it's like, go back in history, just research it. If you don't want to take the time, ask ChatGPT to research it for you and tell you how you're wrong about how things were stated and everything else. It's all there. Just go read. I told you I don't like to read, but I do understand certain things. I do read things. I just don't sit down and read a book unless it's something really important to me. And like I'm going to work on something or fix it, or I'll watch something about a documentary. But I think it's really important to understand this. I appreciate you writing those. Now, if we could get somebody. So I read a book that was about the same similarities with Vietnam and Iraq, which is
that's interesting.
His dad was in Vietnam and he was in Iraq, and they had to have a conversation. They were talking about the similarities, and they wrote a book about it. I thought it was a unique take on it. How the same things and the same reasons. Mm-hmm. Well, we left it the same way. So
yeah, sadly, yes.
Yeah. So there's one similarity. Democrat was in charge, and then we just left. And anyway,
yeah.
Yes,
it's over because I said it was over.
That's right. And again, I don't. If any party's wrong, I'm going to call them out. So if I'm picking on a Democrat, it's just because they were in power during that period of time. So
fair enough.
Yeah. So I mean, everybody thinks you're a Republican. I didn't say that. I'm not a party person. I just vote what I think is the best right now. There's not a single party that I think is the perfect for everything that I think of. Mm-hmm. But it's
because you're a thinker.
Yeah, it's only a two-party system. However, there's many different parties that should be in that to be more. But then if you were a three-party system, the Democrat would win all the time because they'd have more people.
Yeah. Then you'd have a parliamentary system, and that's even worse.
Yeah, that's California where I'm at. So,
yeah. I was in California going to school back in the 60s, and I absolutely
Monterey.
Then
Where'd you go?
I was in LA.
Okay, yeah, that was great. I mean, when I was in Southern California during the 80s and the early 90s, it was amazing.
I remember back. I got married before I went to college, and my wife was working while I was going to school. She'd come home from work. We'd grab a hibachi and go out on the beach and cook supper and just watch the ocean. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. Watch the sunset. Now you can't even get on the beach after dark. They have it fenced off. It's what?
Yeah. As I was explaining to the person earlier, so California politics, where it's only one party state, is Schwarzenegger's fault. And people don't understand that. And he was trying to keep Republicans in power. So he rushed a thing on the ballot that was the top two people to be on the ballot only instead of top two parties. And so now what they do is it's all skewed to where they just have two Democrats and no Republican because it's the top two people. They get enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to take to change that.
I do. It's going to happen. It's that. Did you ever see the movie during the 80s called The Warriors?
Can't say I did.
It's basically it's about a bunch. That's how New York's going to look after Mondani's done. It's a story about a bunch of gangs who get together to have a truce, but it's during the 80s, and it shows New York during the 80s and how bad, all the graffiti. They didn't go make that. That was there, and all the trains that are messed up and everything. It's seeing how bad it is and how nasty it is. Look at the Charles Bronson movies from the 80s. How bad that whole area is. That's what it's going to get to. The reason I'm bringing it up.
Agree.
That's what's going to have to happen to California. And they've wasted so much money. We can't find $76 billion. Yeah, I know where it is. I know exactly where it is. One of them bought a house recently. We won't get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, again, that's the problem. My wife never wants to hear about politics. and that's okay. She's a nurse, totally different world. But for what I do, I'm on talk radio. I do run a mortgage company. It affects me personally, what happens.
Sure.
And I just want us to all be able to get along, keep government out of my business. Unless I'm screwing up, then you can come after me. But just, I don't need that thumb on me all the time. I just wanted to enjoy life and be able to do things. I get it. They need to be there to protect us sometimes, but that's fine. But don't overreach. And that's the problem.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, that's, it's funny. Most veterans do.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
Because we have to think. There are some people we won't get into with different jobs. They don't have to think, but we have to think. And I think it's important for us. One, we all get along. We understand different personalities. Anyway, I think we all get along because we understand what we had to go through when we're in the military.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had an interesting experience when I was first going to college. I went to Northrop University, which was a small engineering school, and the population of the students was almost evenly divided between kids coming right out of high school and veterans like me. And you could look across the campus and tell them a block away who was what. It amazed me that the majority of the dropouts were those high school kids. The most vets had that work ethic that gets instilled in you or else.
Right.
And they would dig in and do the work. And a lot of those kids out of high school weren't willing to do that.
No.
Going back that far.
Yeah. It's that way to this day. I mean,
yes.
You can see a veteran across the room and even without their Vietnam hat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just how people are. And I was at the gym one day and I walk out and the guy opens the door and he goes, said, sir, or whatever. I said, first of all, I said, Army or Marine? He laughed. He goes, why do you say that? I go, because those are usually the only two that keep saying sir after they leave. And he goes, actually, Air Force. I'm like, really?
Yeah, Air Force, I do it. I'm sorry.
No.
I was taught to respect people.
But that was different time. That was a different time. You guys sewed up your pockets so you didn't put your hands in your pockets back in the Vietnam. That's what my dad said. If you kept your hands in your pockets, they'd go have your pockets sewed up.
Yeah. That didn't happen to me, but I know some guys that did.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
I'm just full of useless knowledge that I remember everything. That's why I was divorced twice and remarried finally. Because I remember things, but my wife says now I don't, but they don't deal with it. But
as long as you remember she's always right, you're good.
Yeah, women, she's always right.
Yep.
Yeah. Until she's out of the room. Or on radio. Then she listens.
There you go.
All right. Jeff, is there anything I didn't ask you I should have asked you today?
Why should somebody read my books?
Oh, okay. Why should somebody read your books, Jeff?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, because I often delve into pieces of history that simply isn't taught anymore. The example I used earlier about the gas rationing cards in World War II, and that's typical. I deliberately go after information like that adds background stuff. In real life, it's things like that you don't even notice, but it completely flavors the era that you're living in. Secondly, unlike a lot of people that write thrillers, mine are all clean. No bad language, no compromising situations. I've had ladies tell me that their 12-year-old son has read my book and loved it. That's exactly what I was after. And for the airplane nuts out there, and there's a lot of them that read this kind of stuff, I always sneak in the most obscure airplane I can find. A real one. I don't make it up. And so the guys that like to follow me go looking for that obscure airplane. That's kind of fun. It's just
Now, I'm going to try to bribe you to send me a signed copy of your book. And if you do that, I will buy another book and hand it to somebody else. Because I always like to have guests who write it, who are author. I'll send the information. Don't worry about it.
Okay, please do. And I'll absolutely do that.
Because I have a whole thing over here of people who've been on my podcasts, because I have multiple podcasts, but all authors, I want a book from them. It just adds to what I do. I appreciate it.
Sure. Now, I'll tell you this, that the Nazi Menace isn't out yet. It should be released in the next couple of weeks. So I may be a little bit slow responding to your request, but I promise you it'll come.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's not like I'll send you the request, and when you have it, I appreciate it.
You betcha.
And then I'll leave you a review, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
I want, because I assume you do it through Amazon in your own self-publishing.
Yes. Well, I don't self-publish. I have a publisher.
Or do you now?
That was just the first one. Okay. I lost my shirt and almost lost my manuscript. Long story, not a happy one.
Well, let's back up, because everybody's going self-publishing now. I mean, pretty much. And I know some people who have published and have publishers, and then they self-publish. And I know people who self-publish from the beginning. You want to explain what happened so people understand the difference?
Oh, sure. Now, this
I have time. I have time. So
okay, all right. Well, shorten me up if you need to. This was 2010, and I'm not going to mention names, as will be obvious here a little bit. But I connected with a company in Arizona that offered packages of help to self-publish, to authors that want to self-publish. And so I submitted my manuscript to them, and I should have caught on faster, but I was naive. When you start into something for the first time, you always have to take your lumps. You kind of pay your dues, to become what you want to do, and that's true in writing. They ended up very poorly editing things. Their responses were bad. For a while, I got pretty good royalties, and then they started dropping off and intermittent. And in the end, the guy that owned the company declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I think you probably know what that means. They come in and take everything but the paint on the wall. And somehow he was able to convince a judge that the material that he had, all the manuscripts, and he had close to 100 authors, all of that intellectual property was worthless. Fortunately, one of the authors was also a lawyer. And so he went to court on the behalf of everybody that was working with this company, and at least we got our manuscripts back, and the copyright information for titles and covers and that kind of thing. But that was a disaster. I think I lost close to $15,000 in that process. So I don't know what to tell people today. You need to be really, really careful. Look at the history of the company and see what kind of successes they have. But don't just take it on faith.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of self-publishing now is just put on Amazon. They don't even have a place that takes the royalties, except for what you get yourself through Amazon and the other stuff. So that must have been a totally different. Because I know another company that went bankrupt also in 2000. When did they go bankrupt? 2020, I think it was. And then because the one guy who started was a New York best time seller, and he started writing stuff for people, and then they started doing, and then they sold the company, and the person who bought the company and took it into the ground, and then somebody else just bought it, which is called Scribe Media, which is they self-publish, and they help you. They're just expensive. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, again, and then I have another guy who just wrote a book recently, and I'm like, I can tell you didn't go through a good, because it's important to have somebody go through your book and
yes,
beautiful and everything else. So
I've been very fortunate. I found a content editor who does a terrific job. It's a little expensive. She charges by the word, and I tend to
write a lot.
I tend to be a little wordy, but in the long run, it really pays off, because she's the one that goes through and looks for, you called this guy James in one place and Jim in another place, or Charles, or some other inconsistency like that if the reader is paying attention, it destroys their what's called the intentional I got to think of this now. Intentional suspension of disbelief. If you're familiar with that concept.
No, that's new to me, but okay.
Okay. When we go in to watch a movie, we know it isn't real. We know that it's actors on the stage and they're mouthing words that somebody wrote for them. We're not seeing real people in a real life. But because we want to be entertained, we kind of set that aside. We decide to not disbelieve, and we enjoy the movie. Well, in a book or a movie, if there's something that comes up that a person says, wait a minute, that's wrong, you've lost them and you never get them back. So that's a real tricky thing you got to watch for.
It's like Mel Gibson going into the tunnel in cowboy boots and coming out in tennis shoes.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing.
Most people didn't see that, but if you pay attention, that's what happened.
Yep.
There's so many of those.
There are. Yeah. And there's people on the set that's supposed to watch for that. That's the amazing part.
Because I've seen so many changes in certain clothes. I'm like, they weren't in that. Just again, like you said, how do people put it together and certain things, and and everything's now high def. So back in the 70s, they could get away with things, in 80s and 90s. But once you start getting the 2000 and on, it'll eventually be remastered and you'll see everything. And that's what's happening now.
So. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So, all right. So now you self-publish through I'm sorry. Back up. You publish through
I publish through a traditional publisher.
Yeah. Who's your traditional publisher? Because I don't have your book.
Blackside Publishing out of Colorado Springs. And the lady,
who do they work with? Who do they work with?
Well, I'm trying to think of the name of the distribution.
No, I just meant author wise, because some traditional publishing only does certain genres. Other ones do everything. So,
well, a quick background: she calls her business Blackside Publishing because her son was a special operator. He died in the Far East or the Middle East on his 13th deployment. So she got hooked up with a lot of the people in the special ops world, and that's how she started writing memoirs and stories from special operators. But she has, I think, about 40 different titles now. If you look up just blacksidepublishing.com, you'll be able to find it. Quite a remarkable lady.
Yeah. And do you help other vets learn how to write or do any of that kind of stuff? Have you done any of those?
Yes, I have. I'm a member of a small writers group that's been around for about 20 years, and it's a lot of fun. We get together, we write all kinds of different things. One of our group writes poetry, for crying out loud, and a couple of the women write romances and that kind of thing. But it's one of those deals where the basic techniques are the same, and we do critiques of each other's work, which is very valuable. There's a young guy that's trying to write a thriller based on his Army experience, and he's having some struggles, and I'm trying to help him, and it makes it very worthwhile to see him learn and see how his work improves.
Because and they have to be careful, especially recent stuff, because there was that one author who wrote a book, and then he's been paying the government $3,500 a month since he got, they came after him, which is ridiculous. But I know another guy he's from Europe, and he was UK, and he couldn't write what happened to him, how when he was undercover in the Turkish prisons for us during trying to find Al Baghdadi and all those people. Wow. Yeah, it's an amazing story. I mean,
oh wow, yeah,
it would be a great movie, but because he was the one who actually found out where Obama and Salon, whatever his fucking, excuse my language, his name is. But and then the CIA person, just verified and everything. But he was in a prison undercover, supposed to be in there for 30 days, ended up being there for 90 days, and then got renditioned out by his country because he was UK. Airborne, but undercover as a Al-Qaeda person, and our generals are the ones who asked him to go undercover, so his country didn't even know, and he was thrown in prison for 4 years for doing that and making the crown look bad.
Wow.
Yeah, I interviewed the guy on a thing, and all I kept saying was wow. No
good deed goes unpunished, right?
That is correct. Yeah. All right, Jeff, it was great having you on the show today, understanding your story and everything about you. Thanks for writing the books. And how do people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
My website is real simple, jeffkildow.com.
And then your email.
Contact me. My email is 37writerguy@gmail.com.
Okay. Are you on LinkedIn or anywhere else that you want people?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook and on Twitter.
Okay. Connect with Jeff. Reach out to him if you have any questions about his books or if you want some help. I don't know if he'll help you, but at least
I'll try.
Again, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Ed. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
My pleasure.